If you're hearing this, the frequency rotation worked, and you found us again. I'm going to be honest with you from the first breath tonight, because you've earned that, and because I don't have the energy left for anything else. Ren is not in the room. For the first time in 23 broadcasts, I am sitting at this desk alone. He's safe. I want to say that immediately before your minds go where mine would go. He's safe, and he is doing something that could not wait, and if everything holds, you will hear his voice before this broadcast ends. But I'm not going to pretend this feels normal. It doesn't. This room is very quiet without him. There's a rhythm two people make without noticing, the small sounds of someone else breathing, shifting, existing on the other side of a desk. And tonight the room doesn't have it, and I keep catching myself waiting for it. I've done a lot of frightening things across these 24 broadcasts. I have read names of the taken knowing the readers of names get taken. I have said the regime's own phrases back to it on its own hardware. Sitting down at this microphone alone tonight was harder than any of it. I want that on the record, whatever the record turns out to be. 6 days ago, we ended a broadcast with a question neither of us could answer. Tonight, I have to tell you what happened when we tried. We're still here. Don't touch your dial. You found us. Or, we found you. This is the Veiled Signal, broadcasting on a rotating frequency from a location that, after everything we learned last week, we're no longer going to describe with words like hidden or safe. It's a room. We're in it. That's all we know for certain anymore, and honestly, tonight, even that feels generous. My name, for the purposes of this broadcast, is Cypher, and this is our 24th transmission. If you're new tonight, you've arrived at a strange moment in this network's life, and I won't pretend otherwise. I'd normally tell a new listener to go back, find our earlier broadcasts, learn the format before the format started coming apart. Tonight, I'll just say, stay. What you're about to hear doesn't require history. It only requires that you know what it feels like to trust something and then find out you don't know what it is. Last week, we discovered that every piece of hardware we've ever broadcast on was procured by the regime we exist to resist. And in the final minutes of that broadcast, live, unplanned, we discovered something worse. Neither I nor my co-host hired the one person this network trusts with everything. Each of us spent 19 months assuming the other one had. 19 months of handing our contacts, our locations, our lives to someone whose face we've never seen, on the strength of an assumption neither of us ever said out loud. Tonight is about what happened when we went looking for the answer. I'll tell you now, we found more than we went looking for. We always do. I'm starting to understand that's by design. The map first. Always the map first. Whatever else is falling apart, that doesn't change. It's the one promise this broadcast has kept every single week for 24 weeks, and tonight of all nights, I need there to be one thing that doesn't change. Sectors 9 and 22 clear skies. Contacts confirmed within the last 5 hours. Supply lines in 9 are actually improving. The first unambiguously good news I've read in 3 weeks, so let me say it twice. Improving. Sector 14, clear skies, but listen closely because 14 is tonight's asterisk. 2 contacts there reported unusual survey activity this week. People with tablets and lanyards knocking on doors, asking residents about their listening habits. Hold on to that phrase. Listening habits. It comes back later tonight, twice, from 2 different directions. And when it does, I want you to remember you heard it here first, in the map, where the practical things live. Sectors 3 and 31 remain storm warning. No change, no improvement, and our contacts there have gone quieter than we'd like. Not silent, I want to be precise, quieter. Check-ins arriving, but shorter. Single-line confirmations where we used to get paragraphs. That could mean caution. It could mean fatigue. It has, historically, sometimes meant something else, and we're watching it. If you're inside either sector, nothing networked, nothing traceable, wait for us. Sector 12. Last week we gave you the first advance warning in this network's history. Relay upgrades, beginning within the week, flagged from a work order before a single crew arrived. The work started 3 days ago, right on schedule. Crews at 4 stations, exactly the pattern Elif Demir documented before she forgot she'd documented anything. 4 stations, same sequence, same unhurried municipal ordinariness. If you're in 12, this is the window. Whatever grounding you're going to do, anchor relationships, paper records, the habits that keep you you, the time is now, not next week. Next week may feel perfectly fine. That's exactly what we're warning you about. The feeling of fine is the event. 7, 18, 26, no change. Still compliant, still normal looking, still wrong in that way we no longer have to explain to anyone who's been listening since the beginning. And Contact 7 is still inside Sector 7, still unexplained, still transmitting. A fact that, after tonight's revelations, sits differently than it did last week, and I suspect 7 knows it. For how much longer, after what they helped us uncover? I genuinely don't know. 7, if you're hearing this, the map still has a space for you. It always will. So, the archivist. I want to take you through the whole week properly, in order, because the order matters. And because you spent 6 days imagining what was happening on our end, and you deserve the real version instead of whatever your worst nights invented. The morning after our last broadcast, we did what we have always done when something urgent surfaces. We sent a query through the internal channel the archivist has answered, without fail, for 19 months. And I want you to understand what "without fail" has actually meant, because the reliability is the whole reason the silence landed the way it did. Every question we have ever asked has come back within hours. Not most questions. Every question. Detailed, sourced, cross-referenced, often answering the question underneath the question we'd actually asked, as though they could hear the thing we were afraid of and addressed it before we found the courage to name it. 19 months. Hundreds of queries. Not one silence. This time, nothing. We told ourselves stories the first day. Busy, cautious after the broadcast, relocating maybe. We'd just announced on air that nobody remembered hiring them, and if I were them, I might have gone quiet too, at least for a night. So we waited a full day, longer than we ever have, and sent again through the backup route. Nothing. Day 3, we tried the emergency protocol. I need to explain this one because it's the detail that kept me awake. The emergency protocol was designed, by the archivists themselves, ironically, for exactly one scenario: the possibility that the archivist had been taken. It doesn't route to a person at all. It triggers a dead drop system that runs automatically, mechanically, independent of anyone's hands. Even if the archivist were captured, unconscious, dead, the system should have answered. It cannot choose not to answer. That was the entire point of its design. The system did not answer. Which leaves exactly 2 possibilities, and I've been living inside both of them all week. Either the system was destroyed, which requires someone to have found infrastructure we've never been able to find ourselves, or the system was switched off by the only person who could switch it off. Day 4, we argued about going to look. Ren wanted to physically trace the backup route, walk it, node by node. I said no, and I'll be honest about why, since honesty is apparently the theme of this broadcast now. I wasn't protecting operational security. I was afraid of what finding an empty room would mean. As long as we hadn't looked, the archivist was still Schrodinger's ally, possibly taken, possibly hiding, possibly protecting us with their silence. The moment we looked, we'd know. And I wasn't ready to know. Day 5, nothing. Day 6, yesterday, nothing. We prepared tonight's broadcast assuming we were, for the first time since this network began, completely alone. We rewrote the sector map from our own contacts only. We drafted an announcement telling you the archivist was gone. It's still sitting on the desk in front of me, that draft. I can see it from here. And then, 52 minutes before this broadcast began, the silence ended. Not through any channel we know, not electronically at all. Someone knocked on the outer door. I need you to understand what that sentence means, because I don't think I can overstate it. Nobody knocks on that door. Nobody has ever knocked on that door. The number of living people who know where this room is could be counted on one hand with fingers left over. And every one of them has a signal protocol, a specific pattern, agreed and rehearsed, precisely so that a knock could never happen. A knock is not a protocol. A knock is a stranger telling you they know where you sleep. Ren was at the monitor inside 3 seconds. I was behind him. The corridor camera showed, and I'm going to describe this exactly because the details matter. It showed the corridor, empty, and the package already sitting against the door. We scrubbed back through the footage. Whoever it was came and went inside 40 seconds, and here is the part I keep returning to. They never fully entered the frame. 40 seconds of footage, and all we have is a sleeve, a dark sleeve, and a hand setting the package down with a gentleness that read less like caution and more like care, like someone returning something borrowed. And they did it without triggering a single one of the approach warnings that have worked flawlessly for 19 months. Warnings, I'll remind you, that were designed for us by the archivist, which is either the most damning fact of the night or the most obvious one. You don't trip alarms you built yourself. The package was brown paper and string. No markings, no note on the outside. About the size of a large dictionary and heavier than it looked. Paper heavy, dense in that specific way. Ren wanted to leave it in the corridor until we could test it somehow. I understood the instinct, and for about a minute we stood there having the argument with our eyes, the way you do when speaking feels dangerous. But we both knew we didn't have the equipment to test anything, and the broadcast was less than an hour out, and I'll be honest with you, I think we both already knew who it was from. There's a feeling paper has when it's been organized by a particular pair of hands. We've been reading that feeling for 19 months, so we opened it. And that is why Ren is not in this room tonight. But before I tell you what was inside, you need to hear tonight's field report, because it arrived while we were still standing over that open package, and it changes the weight of everything that follows. This is Contact 12, recorded 14 hours ago. I want you to listen to the end of it carefully, because she asked us to play it unedited, and we're honoring that.
This report has 2 parts. The first is information. The second is a decision I've made, and I'm not asking anyone's permission for it. R came back to my door yesterday. Same smile, same clipboard. But the questions have changed, and I want to document the change precisely, because I think the sequence matters to whoever is mapping this program's evolution. Last time she was recruiting, utilities discounts, community gardens, the friendly version. The visit before that, with Hana, she was assessing isolation. This time, she asked how I've been sleeping, whether the building noise bothers me, whether I listen to anything in the evenings to relax. She asked it exactly like that. Do you listen to anything in the evenings? And then she waited, with her pen ready, in a way that told me the question wasn't small talk. It was the entire reason for the visit. Everything before it was scaffolding. The outreach program has moved from mapping who is isolated to mapping what people listen to. I don't think I need to explain to this network what that's for. I told her I mostly read. She asked what I read. I said history mostly, which is true, and which I chose because true things are easier to repeat identically the second time you're asked. She wrote it down. She wrote down that I read history. Then she asked, and this is the detail I most need you to hear, she asked whether I'd noticed any of my neighbors keeping unusual hours. Lights late, visitors, sounds. She asked me to report on my neighbors, conversationally, over her clipboard, the way you'd ask about the weather. And I understood, standing in my own doorway, that I was being offered a choice that wasn't visible on its surface. Answer and become a source. Decline and become a subject. There was no third door. I said I keep to myself. She smiled and wrote that down too. Both answers went on the same form. And then, as she was leaving, she stopped in the doorway and said, completely warmly, completely without threat, she said, "Some of the neighbors mentioned hearing a radio through your wall some nights. You should come to the community center instead. The evenings are lovely now." Some of the neighbors mentioned. My neighbors are reporting sounds through walls, and R delivered that fact to me gently, like a gift, like a friend passing along a compliment. That's the genius of it, and I use that word deliberately. The threat and the kindness arrive in the same sentence, spoken by someone who genuinely means the kindness, and you cannot respond to one without appearing to have heard the other. So, that's the information. Here is the decision. I know this network discovered things last week about what contact might cost. I heard the warning. I've now heard it twice. Once from your broadcast, once from your automated channel when I filed this report. I understand the new protocol, and I understand that every transmission I send now is a coin flipped over my own name. I've thought about it for 6 days. I thought about it while watching R's window from my own. 2 friends mapping each other across a courtyard, neither of us what we were a month ago. And my answer is, I'm going to keep reporting. Not because I'm brave. I want to be honest about that. This isn't courage, it's arithmetic. If the program is doing what I think it's doing, my name went on a list the day R wrote down that I read in the evenings. Silence doesn't take me off that list. It just means the list grows in the dark, unwitnessed. And I would rather be a witness than a survivor of something no one recorded. So if these reports stop arriving one day, and after yesterday I think we all understand they might, I have one request. Don't read my name gently. Don't make it sound peaceful. Read it the way you'd read a fact the regime tried to erase. Loudly, clearly, twice if you can spare the airtime. Because I was here. I saw what they were building, and I wrote it down, and I sent it to someone. That's not nothing. You told me that once. It's not nothing. Contact 12. Transmission ends.
We're not going to add anything to that. Anything we said would be smaller than what she said. 12. If you're listening tonight, and I believe you are, heard. All of it. Every word. Names of the taken. Shorter tonight. Not because there are fewer, but because one of them needs more room than usual, and we're giving it to her. Hana Okafor, 33. She lived 4 buildings down from Contact 12's neighbor, R, in the Eastern Reach. 2 weeks ago, R visited her as part of the ministry's outreach program and filed a report noting, among other things, that Hana had cried during their conversation. That report was filed on a Tuesday. By the following Monday, Hana's flat was listed as available for reassignment in the municipal housing registry. No forwarding record, no relocation filing. The registry entry says the previous tenant departed voluntarily. Her sister has been calling the housing office daily. On the 4th day, the office told her that continued inquiries into voluntary departures could be noted in her own residency file. They didn't threaten her. They informed her, politely, that asking about her sister was becoming a fact about her. That grief, pursued past a certain number of phone calls, converts into a record. Sit with that mechanism for a moment, because it's the regime in miniature. They don't forbid you from looking for the missing. They just make the looking itself visible, countable, filed, until the cost of love is a ledger entry, and people learn to grieve quietly, and the quiet gets mistaken for peace. Hannah's sister called again on the 5th day, and the 6th. She told our contact she intends to call every day until someone answers, or until she can't. We are not going to advise her to stop. We are going to read her sister's name on every broadcast until there's a reason not to. Hannah Okafor, 33. She cried in front of the wrong clipboard, and 11 days later, she was a vacancy. We don't know where she is. We don't know if where is even the right question anymore. But her name is on this record now, read aloud, witnessed by everyone hearing this, and that cannot be unfiled. 2 more names, briefly, both from Sector 14, and both connected to something. Dominic Vey, 41, a building superintendent who kept a handwritten log of maintenance crews entering his building after hours. Gone since Thursday. Sarah Imrie, 29, who asked at a residence meeting why the new door intercoms needed microphones that stayed warm when idle. Her flat went quiet the same week. A log of who enters buildings, a question about microphones, and a survey in the same sector asking people what they listen to in the evenings. 14 is being mapped. We can see the shape of it now, and we are telling you before it closes. If you're in 14, assume the walls are curious. Act accordingly. 2 more names tonight from outside 14, because the list does not pause for our mysteries. Gideon Marsh, 58. He drove a night delivery route through 3 sectors, and for 8 months he'd been quietly noting which streets had new cabling trenches dug and refilled within single nights, work that appeared on no schedule and left no municipal record. He gave his notes to a friend, who gave them to us. The notes arrived. Gideon's route has a new driver. The depot says he transferred south. There is no record of any transfer. And Anya Petros, 26. A teacher, like Nadia Ferreira, whose name opened this series, and whose mother, Elena, still writes to us monthly. Anya taught music. 3 weeks ago, she asked her school's administrator why the new classroom speakers carried a second, sealed housing beneath the visible one. She asked in writing. The reply, when it came, was addressed not to her, but to her landlord. She has not been seen since the following weekend. Her classroom has new speakers now. Single housing, nothing sealed. As though the question itself was removed and the room renovated around its absence. Gideon Marsh, Anya Petros, Hannah Okafor, Dominic Vey, Sarah Imrie. We will not let any of them disappear twice. All right, the package. Inside the brown paper was a document archive, physical, paper, hundreds of pages. Wren counted 411 before he stopped counting. Hand-organized, indexed with a system so meticulous it could only belong to one person. Tab colors by subject, cross-references in the margins in a shorthand we've spent 19 months learning to read. There is no doubt in either of our minds, and I want to be precise about that. This is not probably from the archivist. This is the archivist's own filing, from the archivist's own hands. They sent us their archive. All of it, as far as we can tell. Every piece of research this network has ever been given, the originals, with the where of use on them, plus a great deal we had never seen. Let me walk through what's in it, in the order Wren and I read it, kneeling on the floor of this room an hour before airtime, like two people going through a parent's belongings. The Vashon files are here, complete, including sections that were withheld from us at the time, and now that I've read them, I understand why they were withheld, and I want to put that on record, even though it complicates the story of the archivist as villain. The withheld sections contain names of Vashon survivors who relocated under new identities. If we'd had those pages 19 months ago and been compromised even once, those people would be gone. The archivist protected them from us. Remember that. Whatever else tonight suggests, remember that the withholding was, at least once, a mercy. The Grey Harbor cell has an entire folder of its own, the resistance that ended 18 months before we began, with the same final discovery we made last week. Names, frequencies, broadcast logs, their equipment procurement trail, which, you will not be surprised to learn, dead ends at the same ministry ours does. But there's a page in the Grey Harbor folder that stopped me cold, and I've been carrying it around the room all day. It's a candidate assessment. Same format, same handwriting, same flat evaluative language as the folder I'm about to describe, dated 4 years ago. Grey Harbor was cast too. Whoever authored our network authored theirs first. We are not the first draft of this play. We are, at minimum, the second. And then there's the folder that Wren found, near the bottom, in a wrapper of its own. The one marked with a single word on the tab. Casting. I'm going to describe its contents very carefully because I've now read every page 3 times and I still keep hoping I've misunderstood. The folder contains observation records, handwritten, dated, the earliest from almost 3 years ago, months before this network existed, months before either of us had ever heard the words Pale Dominion, and the subjects of those records are us, me, Wren, both founding cell members who recruited us, Contact 7, 2 other operatives I won't name on air, 7 files, 7 people, watched before there was anything to be watched for. Pages of notes, where we worked before any of this, who we spoke to and how long, and what we did when conversations turned political, how we responded to specific events. And I want to flag something here that I noticed on the 3rd read. Some of those events are strange. Small crises. A records dispute at my old workplace that escalated for no reason anyone understood at the time. A missing person flyer that appeared on Wren's street for a person who, as far as we can now determine, never existed. Tests. They weren't just observing how we responded to the world. They were building the world we responded to, piece by piece, and taking notes. Assessments of temperament, of loyalty, of persistence under uncertainty. That exact phrase appears in my file 4 times. Of what each of us could tolerate before breaking, written in the flat professional language of someone evaluating candidates. Because that's what we were. Candidates. The last page of my file has a single line at the bottom, dated 2 months before I was first approached about joining a resistance network I believed I had found my own way into. I remember the day I found it. I remember believing I'd been careful and clever and lucky. The line reads, "Suitable. Proceed to contact." Wren's file ends with the same line. Everyone's file ends with the same line. 7 files, 7 suitables, 7 people who each walked into a room believing they'd discovered it. We did not build this network. We did not find this network. We were selected for it, cast, like a play, by someone who was watching all of us long before any of us knew there was anything to resist. The network wasn't infiltrated, everyone. The network was authored. I want to tell you what it's like to read a file about yourself, because I think some of you will eventually know this feeling, and maybe hearing it described will make it survivable when you do. The strangest part isn't the surveillance. You brace for the surveillance. We've all lived under it long enough to imagine being watched. The strangest part is the accuracy. There's a line in my file from 2.5 years ago that describes how I respond to institutional betrayal. It uses examples from my life that I had half forgotten, and it predicts, in one flat sentence, that I would respond to discovering such a betrayal not by fleeing, but by broadcasting it. That I would, quote, convert injury into testimony. Everyone, that is what I am doing right now. This broadcast, tonight, this exact act, it's on page 6 of my file, predicted 30 months ago, in handwriting I've trusted for 19 of them. I am doing the thing the file said I would do, and I cannot tell whether that means the file is a cage or just a mirror. And the worst part, the genuinely worst part, is that the alternative is silence, and the file predicts I'll say that too. I've had 11 hours to sit with this, and I want to share the thoughts I keep circling because you deserve my actual thinking and not a performance of composure. The first thought is the obvious, terrible one. If the archivist selected us, and the archivist chose hardware the regime owned, then the simplest explanation is that this network is a regime project, a containment vessel. Think about the elegance of it. You don't hunt the people who would resist. Hunting is loud. Hunting creates martyrs. Hunting radicalizes the neighbors. Instead, you build the resistance yourself. You profile the population, select the ones with the temperament for it, arrange for each of them to discover a network that was waiting for them all along, and keep the whole thing on towers you control. Every person who was ever going to resist walks willingly into a room you built for them and broadcasts their name into your microphone every week. The harvesting theory from last week, one level deeper. Not just monitoring the resistance, manufacturing it, farming it. That's the first thought. Here's the second, and I hold them both at the same time because after this week, I don't trust any single explanation of anything. Everything in that archive is real. That's the problem with the containment theory. It explains the architecture and fails the contents. The Vashon research saved lives. We've confirmed it independently, repeatedly, over 19 months. The sector warnings were accurate, every time. The advance warning on 12 is proving accurate as I speak. The crews arrived on the exact day the archivist's flagged work order said they would. If this is a containment project, it is a containment project that keeps handing us true, operationally useful intelligence against its own supposed author, week after week, at what should be enormous cost to the regime's actual operations. Either the regime built a trap so elaborate that it functions identically to genuine resistance, at which point I genuinely don't know what the word trap still means, or someone inside something, some ministry, some archive, some room we haven't imagined yet, has been using us, very deliberately, as an instrument. And an instrument, everyone, can be used to play more than one kind of song. I don't know which is true, but the package itself is a third fact that doesn't fit either theory cleanly, and it's the fact I keep stubbing my mind against. After 19 months of perfect anonymity, the archivist voluntarily exposed everything, including the casting folder, including the files on us, including the proof that our whole origin was constructed. Nobody exposes their own machinery by accident, and nobody exposes it without reason. This was a message. I just don't speak the language yet. And there's one more page I haven't told you about. I'm saving it for the end of tonight's broadcast, and when you hear it, you'll understand why. Because it's addressed to us. And it's the first time in 19 months the archivist has ever spoken in the first person.
It's me. It's me. Don't stop the broadcast. I made it. Are we live? Tell me we're still live.
We're live. Sit down. Breathe. Everyone, Ren has just walked back into this room, mid-broadcast, for the first time in this network's history. And I am now finding out what he found at the same moment you are. Go ahead, from the beginning.
Okay. So, the package. Whoever delivered it beat every approach warning we have, but they couldn't beat physics. Paper that heavy, carried on foot, in the rain we had last night? There were traces. I'm not going to describe them on air, because if I can read them, someone else can learn too. But they gave me a direction, and the direction gave me a guess, and I spent 4 hours confirming the guess before I let myself believe it. 11 blocks east, the old municipal records annex, the one that's been officially closed for 6 years. Boarded windows, condemned notice on the door, a demolition assessment stapled over the condemned notice, pigeons in the gutter line, the works. I must have walked past it 100 times without looking at it. And Cypher, that's the part I want everyone to sit with. The not looking. It's not hidden. It's boring. They didn't conceal it. They made it uninteresting. And that worked on me for 19 months, and I'm the suspicious one. Except the mail slot. The mail slot in that boarded up door is clean. Brass polished by use. Not cleaned, used. There's a difference. Cleaning leaves swirls, and use leaves a shine in the middle where hands go. Hinge oiled. 6 years condemned, and that slot has been swallowing mail the entire time. So I did something I probably shouldn't have done alone, and you can be angry with me later, and I can already tell from your face across this desk that you will be. I went in. The boards on the side entrance are theater, mounted on a frame. The whole panel swings like a normal door if you know to push at the hinge side instead of the handle side, which took me 11 minutes of standing in the rain looking like exactly what I was. And inside? Inside, it's not abandoned. It's an archive. A live one. I need everyone to picture this properly. Shelving in every room, floor to ceiling, rolling ladders, the same indexing system as the package, the same handwriting on the labels, and there are thousands of labels. Thousands. Municipal records, procurement files, surveillance summaries, transit logs, medical district reports, going back decades. I opened a drawer at random, and it was water infrastructure complaints from before I was born, cross-referenced against something in a shorthand I recognized, because I've been reading that shorthand every week for 19 months. Decades, Cypher. This place was operating long before the Dominion had a name. Whatever the archivist is, they didn't start with us, and they didn't start with Gray Harbor either. They've been filing this city away since before any of this had begun, and in the back room there's a desk. One desk, one chair, one lamp, and the lamp was warm. I put my hand on the bulb housing and it was warm. There's a cup on the desk with tea in it, and the tea was warm. Whoever works there left minutes before I arrived. Minutes. Which means either I got lucky, or they left because I was coming. Which means they knew I was coming. Which means they watched me do my 4 hours of careful confirming and let me. And on the desk, facing the door, facing me, positioned the way you'd angle a photograph toward a visitor's chair, there was a radio. Our make, our model, the same unlisted manufacturer designation as every tower we broadcast from. I checked the plate, I wrote down the serial, and it was on. Volume low, tuned to this frequency, to us. The archivist doesn't just read our transmissions, Cypher, they listen. Live. Every week, probably from that chair, with that tea, from a records office the city forgot, 11 blocks from this room.
11 blocks. 19 months, and they've been 11 blocks away the entire time. I keep doing the arithmetic of that. Every query we sent through encrypted channels, every dead drop across the city, every protocol. And the answers were being written by hand 11 blocks east by someone who could have walked here in 20 minutes. Who did walk here last night in the rain. Did you take anything? Touch anything?
One thing. And before anyone judges that, it was left out alone in the center of the desk beside the radio, separate from everything else. Everything else in that building is filed, shelved, indexed, put away. This was placed, deliberately, the way you'd leave something for someone you were expecting. A single index card. Same handwriting as everything else. I've read it maybe 40 times on the walk back, and I'm going to read it to everyone now, exactly as written. It says, "The folder you are afraid of is incomplete. There was an 8th candidate file. It is not in the package because the 8th candidate declined." Cypher, everyone in the casting folder said yes, all 7 of us. Profiled, tested, approached, recruited, 7 for 7. That's not a recruitment record, that's a machine that doesn't miss. Except it missed once. Somewhere out there is one person who was watched the same way we were, assessed the same way we were, approached the same way we were. Someone who sat across from whatever we each sat across from, heard the offer we each heard, and said no. And the archivist wants us to know they exist. Out of 400 pages of everything, the one page withheld is that one. And then they left me a card to make sure we knew it was withheld. That's not an omission, Cypher. That's an arrow.
We started answering listener messages on air last week, and after tonight's revelations, I considered cutting the segment. And then I read this week's messages, and realized cutting it would be a kind of cowardice. You asked hard things. You get answers, even tonight. Especially tonight.
First message, paraphrased as always. After last week, how do we know your new contact warning isn't itself a filter, a way of discouraging exactly the people the regime most wants silent? I sat with this one a long time because the honest answer is, you can't know that. We can't fully know it either. That's the poison of last week. It gets into every intention, including our own. What I can tell you is the reasoning. The warning exists because we'd rather lose 10 reports from cautious people than gain one name on a list we don't understand. If that reasoning is wrong, if silence costs more than contact, then we've made a terrible bet, and we've made it in the open, where you can judge it. That's the only defense we have anymore. Everything in the open. Judge us with full information. It's more than anyone else in this city offers you.
Second message, and this one is why I kept the segment tonight. My brother stopped asking questions 8 months ago. Not suddenly, slowly, like a tide going out. Your broadcast about friction was the first time anything described it. Is there a way back? Can a person be restored? I have read that message perhaps 30 times, and I'm going to give you the only honest answer we have. We don't know. We have never documented a reversal. But I'll tell you what we also haven't documented. We've never seen anyone try, deliberately, with knowledge of what they were trying against. Elif Demir's colleague still visits her every week, reads to her from the log she doesn't remember keeping. Not to test her, just so the words pass through the room. It may do nothing. But adjustment works by removing friction, and love is a kind of friction. It asks things. It notices. It refuses to be convenient. So, no promises. This broadcast doesn't sell hope. It's the one thing we refuse to traffic in falsely. But if you're asking whether to keep visiting your brother, yes. Keep visiting. Keep being the thing that asks. If there is a way back, it will not open by itself. And if there isn't, then he doesn't disappear twice either. Not while you're still in the room.
Last one. Short. Why do you two keep doing this? Genuinely. After everything you've learned, why haven't you stopped? And I laughed when I first read it, not because it's funny, but because I asked Cypher almost exactly this, on air 7 days ago, at the top of my voice. Here's my answer this week, for whatever it's worth. I keep doing this because of the maths of the alternative. If we stop, the warnings stop, and we know, provably from Sector 12 alone, that the warnings buy people time to stay themselves. Whoever built this network, for whatever purpose, that fact stays true. A trap that saves lives is a strange trap. I'd rather work the strange trap than grieve in the silence. Ask me again next week. The answer keeps having to be re-earned. I think that's probably the point.
We have maybe 10 minutes of safe airtime left, and I want to spend it on what this means for you. Because this broadcast has never been about our mysteries, even on the nights when our mysteries are all we can see. Here's where tonight leaves the people listening. The guidance stands, all of it. Paper records, anchor relationships, question unexpected peace, know the phrases. And after Contact 12's report, add this one, tonight, urgently. If anyone, friend, neighbor, official, anyone, asks what you listen to in the evenings, the answer is nothing. You read. You sleep early. The radio through the wall was a neighbor's, and you've complained about it yourself. Don't embellish. Don't perform. Boring answers survive scrutiny. Interesting ones get filed. And let me extend that, because 14's pattern tonight teaches us the next stage. The mapping has moved indoors. Intercoms, classroom speakers, walls that are curious. So, conversations that matter happen outside, walking, in weather if you can stand it. Rain is a friend. It always has been to this network. If you must speak indoors, run water. It's an old method because it works. And if you own a radio, and statistically, listening to me now, you own a radio, think about where it sits. Not near a window, not near a shared wall. Volume below the threshold of the next room. You already know these things instinctively. I'm telling you the instinct is now policy. On the larger question, whether this network is real or authored, whether your trust in us was ever safe, I'm not going to resolve that for you tonight, because I can't. And false resolution is the regime's product, not ours. But I'll tell you what I keep holding on to. Whoever built this network, for whatever reason, what happened inside it was real. The warnings were real. The people who evacuated Sector 7 before it went quiet are really alive. 12's courage tonight was real. Hana Okafor's name, read aloud, witnessed by thousands of you. That's real now, and it cannot be unfiled. A stage is authored. What the players do on it doesn't have to be. We didn't choose how this network began. We do choose, every single week, what it does. And it's still here. And so are you. That's not nothing. Someone very brave taught me that phrase tonight.
One practical thing from me before we close, because I've had 11 blocks of walking to think about it, and 11 blocks is enough to turn a shock into a plan. The 8th candidate, the one who said no, we're going to look for them, carefully, slowly, on paper and on foot. Nothing networked, nothing that touches a tower. It may take months, it may take longer than this network has left, whatever that number is. Because think it through with me. Everyone who said yes ended up inside a machine we don't understand, cast into roles we didn't know were roles, performing a resistance that may or may not be ours. The only person who saw the offer clearly enough to refuse it might be the only person who understood from the very beginning what this thing actually is. They looked at whatever we each looked at, the invitation, the recruiter, the perfectly timed discovery of a network that needed exactly them, and something in it rang false, or rang true in a way the rest of us couldn't hear. Either way, they heard something we didn't. 7 of us failed a test we didn't know we were taking. 1 person passed. And here's the thought I couldn't shake on the walk back. The archivist didn't have to tell us the 8th candidate existed. 400 pages, and the one thing deliberately withheld was then deliberately flagged as withheld. That's not carelessness, that's curation. The archivist is pointing, which means one of 2 things. Either finding the 8th candidate is the next step of whatever this design is, in which case we're still on the stage, still playing our parts, and I hate that possibility with everything I have left tonight. Or the 8th candidate is the one piece of this that was never part of anyone's design. The variable, the person the plan couldn't absorb. If you're listening, and after tonight I have to assume anyone might be, we're not coming to recruit you. We know better now. Nobody in this network will ever again mistake an invitation for a coincidence. We're coming to ask what you saw.
Which brings us to the final page of the archive, the one addressed to us. I want to describe the physical page first, because after tonight, I don't take any detail for granted. It's the same paper stock as everything else, but it's the only page in 411 that's handwritten on both sides. The back is a list. Every broadcast we've ever made, numbered 1 through 23, each with a single tick beside it. 23 transmissions, 23 ticks, like an attendance register. Like someone keeping faith with something, week after week, in a condemned building, alone. I've stopped being able to tell whether that image is sinister or heartbreaking. Possibly the lesson of tonight is that it can be both. And the front is one line plus a signature. The first time in 19 months the archivist has ever signed anything. I'm going to read it exactly as written, and then we're going to sign off, because I don't think anything should follow it tonight. It says, "You were chosen because you would eventually ask. Keep asking. Signed, A." That's it. That's everything. You were chosen because you would eventually ask. Not chosen despite the fact that we'd one day turn on the person who chose us. Chosen because of it. Whatever this network was built for, the questioning, the thing we did last week that felt like the whole world coming apart, the questioning was the point. We weren't cast to obey the play. We were cast to eventually tear up the script. 19 months of tests, and the test was tonight. And I don't know if we passed or if passing was the trap. I don't know if there's a difference. I don't know. And here is the sentence I never thought I'd say into this microphone. I don't know if the archivist is the enemy of the Pale Dominion, or its author, or something third that we don't have a word for yet. But they kept a tick list of every night we stayed on air. Alone, in the dark, 11 blocks away. Make of that what you will. I haven't finished making anything of it. We'll be back next week, same rotation. If the pattern holds, you'll find us. 12. Stay careful. 7. Stay strange. Everyone in 14. The walls are curious, remember? This has been the Veiled Signal. Stay on your frequencies. Don't touch your...
Cipher. The board. Something's keying into the board. That's not ours. Nothing of ours is live. I'm looking at every channel, and they're cold. Cipher. Something is inside the...
She said no, because she met me.